geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic book fans the world over. Welcome back to your very own comic book college of knowledge, where I share the the questionable wisdom of several decades spent writing comic books, and you get to ask me questions about that, and I answer them with as much candor as I can. And we've got some challenging questions. I hope I'm up to providing you the answers you seek. First one up here for the new year. We're going to go deep here. Going to go deep in the comic book process. And hopefully we'll all learn something. Mike Partika. I'm curious about how creators and editors at comic book companies normally interact. In an ideal world, I would think, 1, a creator turns in her piece of the book. For example, writing, penciling, inking, coloring, lettering. The editor suggests or orders changes. And 3, the creator turns in the changes. Repeat steps 2 and 3 as needed. It occurs to me, though, that a monthly publishing schedule like the big two have would not offer much time for iterative? Is that a word? I'm about to look that one up. Iterative editorial refinement. It'll teach me not to read these questions before I go on air. When an editor only has 30 days or less to get a comic book out the door, she might have to cut corners on quality, either by letting small mistakes go or by getting whatever warm bodies are available to contribute quick fixes. On the other hand, today's independent companies who don't concern themselves with consistent monthly output theoretically should have much more time to allow editors and creators to all get on the same page, pun intended, actually it's a play on words, and get the books as right as possible before they're published. He continues, as you're someone who's worked for both publishers who take the monthly route, Marvel, DC, CrossGen, and publishers who have a more flexible schedule, Nolanverse, Rippaverse, what are creator-editor interactions really like in both kinds of publishing environments? Well, it's an awesome question. And I'm going to go pretty far-ranging here for those of you, who don't understand the comic book process and how it works. But basically, the situation is different, as you point out, in each environment, be it a monthly comic or event publishing, which is largely what companies like Rippaverse and Compass Comics and Billy Tucci and your boy Zach and guys like that. That's what they do. They do event publishing. They're not on a monthly schedule. But that said, you got to deal with an editor. And back in the day, once upon a time, you had, at the big two, you had editors who maybe they didn't, at one time didn't think real highly of the audience buying the comics, but at least they knew how to keep the work consistent. And, they were tough. They were bastards, the way any good editor has to be a bastard at times. And they put the stuff out. Then things changed as, comic book fans entered the comic book profession and became editors. And you had a friendlier editorial environment for the most part. A lot of the editors were comic book enthusiasts or aficionados. And the most talented ones brought those passions to bear. And they were concerned about the quality of the product. They were interested in experimenting with the medium. Things like that. Really saw comics as an art form, as a legitimate entertainment medium, not just a lowbrow sort of appendix to the general, pop culture of the time. So you were working with, at least in my experience, for the most part, I was working with very earnest professionals. And it was more of a partnership as I saw it, more than an employee-employer relationship, because we were all creatives. We were all being creative. The editors, many of the editors I work with were professional writers themselves, very good professional writers. And, or, had people like Larry Hama who could do everything. He was a renaissance man of not just comics, but of pop culture generally. But he could do any job in comics. And so he was an earnest professional who could do anything. If he asked you to do something, he could do that himself if you failed. So, you're working with a great gang of folks then. Today, comic book editors, not so much. They're not really interested in comics. Comics are a stepping stone to working at Vogue or MTV or Bravo Network. And they're not really that interested in comics. They really don't care about the readership. In fact, they mostly loathe the readership. They don't care about the quality of the work. And there you go. This is where we are now. And this explains why comics are in a tailspin sales-wise. And it's, sad. It's very sad. But that's the way it is. Now, to the different companies. Now, DC Comics ran like a machine. They had, pie charts and graphs and everything figured out, into the next year. They were making projections, and you were given time to do your work. And the best editors I had at DC left me alone. The worst editors, of course, were over my shoulder 24/7 trying to tell me how to do my job. But basically, the feeling at DC was it ran like a machine, and always had. And lateness was not tolerated. And their production department was, you walk in their production department and it was like a study hall in high school. It's quiet and people just diligently working. An enormous contrast to Marvel. And Marvel, now both of them had their style. Marvel style was hurry up, panic room, chaos. The bullpen at Marvel was, always stuff going on. There was always an issue late. I saw editors coloring covers, two editors coloring a cover, one starting at the top, the other one starting at the bottom, and laying down the colors on a cover that had to go out within hours. So everything at Marvel was crazy, and somehow they got all the books out on time. But it was always nuts there, and that was their style. It was, and you kind of see it in the comics, don't you? Back in the day, DC, very corporate, very, wearing your tie to lunch, and Marvel just throwing stuff up against the wall, just, any crazy idea, and just going nuts. It's like a frat party, as opposed to, it's Delta House, versus Sigma Chi or whatever the other guys were in Animal House. Now, and it was an interesting environment. Now I get the CrossGen. CrossGen has no editors. We're our own editors, which can be dangerous, very, very dangerous. But Mark Alessi or whoever, I don't know who came up with this system, came up with a system of self-editing that really worked. And I wish every comic book company would do this. And they don't. Nobody's ever done this with CrossGen. As far as maybe they do this at RIPA, but they don't involve the creators. At CrossGen, what you would do is we would get printed up proofs of an issue going out. So say, Way of the Rat #7. And the creative team would sit in the break room together and read it together. So I'm there with, Jeff Johnson and I remember, was it Tom Ryan was the inker? And I can't remember who the colorist, Nick Bell, colorist. And so your whole creative team is sitting there reading the comic page by page and marking up typos, color corrections, and the rest of it. And so you go around the table and everybody's looking at each other's work, basically, and we're checking and we're making notes. And that's not where it ends. Then a second round would be people not involved with the book. So you might have Bart Sears sitting in, Ron Mars, you get another writer to take a look at it. You get somebody from production to look at it. Maybe another artist, maybe whoever they could grab. And so the table reconvenes to read through the issue again. They all sit there and they read it together and look for errors. And that's how we caught all the mistakes. And we never missed deadline. We were great on deadlines. All those years, we never missed a deadline. Never even came close. Largely because Mark Alessi somehow hired the majority of the people working with him were self-starters. They didn't need a calendar. They just needed to know, what's our ship date? What date does this have to be in the FedEx box to go to the printer? And of course, it was all done digitally, but you get my, what date do you need this done by? It will be done by then. And then the process, I should say something about the process. The big two, ideally, or at a normal periodical publishing company, a comic should come out every 30 days, which means, is the comic created in 30 days? No, comics take about 3-4 months. Each comic that you pick up takes 3 or 4 months of work to do. Well, then Chuck, if it takes 3 or 4 months to make, how the hell does it come out monthly? Well, that's because everybody's doing their work at the same time. Now, it all starts with, the editors will say it starts with the editors. It starts with the writers. It starts with that blank screen, and a guy like me has got to fill that screen with words and characters and dialogue and fun stuff. And so it starts with me. So, in order to make sure the train leaves the station on time, I got to get my work in well before the penciler needs it. Not when he needs it. My philosophy is get it in well before he needs it. Even if I have to stay 3-4 issues ahead of him, so the penciler, he, she, whatever, are never waiting on me. I never want that to happen. And so, process starts with me. Now I might have 3-4 scripts piled up, so I've got the next 3-4 months, maybe 6 months of work done. So my work is done. My work is handed in. Now the penciler goes to work. And does the penciler, do we give him 30 days? He's got to do a page a day, 22 days, generally a month's work. Some guys work faster, some guys work slower. But do you just wait till he's done? No, of course you don't wait till he's done. As he's handing in pages, those pages are going off to the inker. And back in the day, they went to the letterer first. But I think these days, with lettering being done digitally on a separate layer and a separate file, not even on the artwork, it goes from the penciler to the inker. And a lot of times, and in the middle of that, the editor sees it. And back in the day, I would see it. DC and Marvel, I insisted I want to see the Xeroxes in case I decide I want to do any kind of rewriting on these things. So I want to see the Xerox pencils as they come in, preferably full size if I can get them full size, so I can think about things, and plus have a really cool collection of Xeroxes, of penciled artwork. So anyway. So the penciler is doing the work. It's shifted through the editor, ideally through the writer as well, if there's any changes to be made, onto the inker. And these are being done consecutively. Penciler's handing in like 5 pages at a time. Inker's inking those 5 pages, waiting on the next 5 pages. And lettering can be done consecutively, but computer lettering is, these guys are fast. They're really fast. And so they can wait till the whole book's done and I imagine a day. to letter a book if it's not written by Chris Claremont. Certainly my books they can letter in a day. Letterers love me because my characters don't yap all the time. So maybe you're lettering as you go along, but generally not. Now I'm doing projects myself that I'm funding myself, and I'm having the lettering done as I go along. The letterer appreciates the paycheck, the regular paycheck, and I'm happy because I know I got completed work in the bag. And then it's on to the colorist. And colorists are fast. I mean, they're faster than pencilers. A good colorist can do 3 pages a day of top quality work. Some can do as many as 5. And they work with assistants and everything else. But again, it's generally done consecutively. Today, penciler's done with his 5 pages, inker's done with the 5 pages. 5 pages go on to the colorist. And hopefully, everywhere along this process, there's at the big 2 or the major publishers anyway, there's an editor, hopefully looking at every step, although not always. And then it's the colorist, it's done, and then any changes can be made pre-production or post-production. There's a lot of post-production work in comics now that didn't used to be the case. But that's how a monthly book is produced, even though it takes months to make each book, because being done, you're staying ahead of schedule and you're doing it concurrently. And then if you're a smart editor, you've got some fill-in issues lined up. If you ever read, if you're old enough to have read Marvel comics in the 70s, fill-in issues were always reprint issues. They do a little framing device and then reprint a story you've already read 16 times. But at DC and later on at Marvel, we would do once a year write an inventory issue in case there was a problem, and you could plug something in. But that really never happened. Now, like I said, at RIP, it's event publishing. Now, the Horsemen and things like that, I mean, ideally we want them to come out at least 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year, but we're not stuck at a quarterly schedule. There's no, hey, we need the issue out at this time. It's largely what the market will bear, and I'm sure that's the same for all of these crowdfunded or self-funded comic book companies. It's how well did the last one do? Do we need to do one right away? I mean, for my part, my job at Rippaverse is to keep Joe Bennett busy. I'm several scripts ahead of him at the moment. We're doing primarily Alpha Core and Horsemen and alternating between the 2. But there's no deadline. They don't say, look, we need it by this date. Because, just when it gets done, it gets done. Because unlike most of the crowdfunding or self-funding companies working now, RIPA doesn't solicit anything. They don't start to crowdfund until the books are done. And by done, I mean in the warehouse. I mean, the cases are there, they're in the warehouse, they're ready to go. So, when we're done and the product is finished, they solicit it, but there's no deadline. There's no, Chuck, can you have this done by the end of March? It's basically just, Chuck, what do you want to do next? Which one do you want to do next? And RIPA will determine the page length. If you're a RIPA follower, you know that we started out with like full-size graphic novels, 80 to 100 pages. We're now doing shorter 48, 52-page things because that seems to be what you folks prefer, and it allows us to publish with a greater frequency and also feel out, what projects work, what's don't, because RIPA is just like any other comic book company. It's about redundant publishing. We want to give you less of what you didn't want and more of what you did want. It's that simple. So, but it's largely, it's event publishing. And for somebody like Graham at Compass Comics, it's all event publishing. It's him coming up with his own ideas, producing them on his own, and soliciting them. So he'll do a few pages, and for the solicit, he'll do the cover, and then you, the reader, are funding. You're paying him to finish it, and of course he has a deadline because he promises it in the solicit. And Graham is one of those deadline monsters. He's never going to let you down. He's never going to miss a deadline. So if he says you're going to have it, end of first quarter, it's going to be there. You're going to get it. But that's what comics have splintered off to be. I mean, it's a whole new creature where you are funding a comic to be delivered later. It's direct fan support, which is really cool. But in the end of all of it, none of it matters. The process doesn't matter, or how you do it doesn't matter. All that matters is that you reach your readership and that they dig what you're doing and you respect them and you approach the work earnestly and honestly and actually care about doing your best work. That's what it's always been about with me, and that's why I always appreciated editors who shared my idea of, let's knock them dead. Let's give these people, their money's worth. And everybody I'm working with now feels that way. We appreciate your patronage. We want to give you your money's worth. We want to make the best comics we can make because we dig comics. It's a big thrill to get those comps and see your work turned into a comic, and you want that to be the best work you can possibly do. You want to, given the time allotted and the talent allotted, and you want to look at that thing and you want to be proud of it. And so much of that is gone now. It's not there. The pride, the commitment, the earnestness. I'm saying it the big two. Crowdfunding, it's all enthusiasm. It's all passion. I mean, look at what Graham's producing, what Ripper's producing, your boy Zach, Billy Tucci, the other, crowded field of crowdfunding guys. They're doing this because they love it, and they don't want to do anything else. So they don't want to go get a real job. Okay, and Pinkava. I hope I didn't mess your name up. You talked in your last podcast about Jimmy Stewart and how Frank Capra used him in his films, but what about Frank Capra himself? There seems to be a dearth in the market for these kind of scrappy gang, community comes together, individuals against corporate powers, not pro-government bureaucracy comedies. Is this an idea that's gone out of vogue or just difficult to be approved by movie makers? Capra his heyday was, he's a very successful silent film director. He made some awesome silent films, a lot of dramas, very unlike what he made in the talkies. And then he moves into talkies in the height of the Depression. And largely his movies are about that. They're about people. And, the common folks and the struggles they're going through. And that's why these, his films really, they touched a nerve with audiences because they were about, the people could see themselves in them and their personal struggles to pay the rent or feed the kids were addressed in these movies at a time when these were real concerns for Americans. And I don't mean like, can we afford, to go to Applebee's this Friday? No, it's like, will we actually have any food today? I mean, if you have, if you're old enough to have had parents or you have grandparents, great-grandparents who went through the Depression and tell you any of the stories, I mean, even the casual stories about what life was like for people who were even middle class in the Depression, it's a nightmare. It really is. And that's what people were dealing with. And when they spent their nickel or their dime to go to the movies, they either wanted total escapism or they wanted something that addressed their plight, that was at least sympathetic toward them. And Hollywood was because so many of the Hollywood moguls at the time came from nothing. I mean, they came here as immigrants, with $2 in their pocket, and built this industry. I mean, they knew what hardship was like. They knew what hard work was like, and so they were able to plug in and understand this audience. And I don't think filmmakers today have that kind of life experience for the most part. They don't get it. They don't understand what real people are like. And you see it. There's this phoniness in what they do when they're trying to appeal to the folks. And any kind of thing that would address community, I mean, I shudder to think what kind of movie Hollywood would produce if they thought they were reflecting the views of the quote-unquote unwashed masses. So another guy who was really good at that, while we're on the subject, Preston Sturges, to me is every bit the iconic director as Capra for the period. And Sturges is a different story. I mean, Capra was an immigrant, Italian immigrant, came from nothing. Sturges came from wealth. His family was wealthy. And he used to go on a lot of cruises as a kid with his mom and high society parties. I mean, his mom, hung out with multimillionaires. And Sturges looked at life from that angle, and he made these poor little rich girl comedies and the rest of it. But the thing about Sturges was he would make comedies, about wealthy people, and they might be con artists or whatever. But he did it in such a way that you could relate to the wealthy people in the story. He made them human. He humanized them. So they weren't the villains. They weren't, the evil landlord. They weren't Mr. Potter. They were, they had their foibles and they were generally silly and everything, but never aloof. They had lots of heart and everything else. But he also would make, and he had some fun with himself. A fantastic movie called Sullivan's Travels, in which Joel McCrea plays a film director who wants to make a very serious movie about the plight of people in the Depression. And of course, he's a Hollywood hack. He knows nothing about how normal people live. And in the end, he finds out that what the audience wants is not some downbeat depiction of their problems. What they want when they go to the movies is to forget their problems. It's an awesome movie, Sullivan's Travels. If you've never seen it, it's every bit as relevant today as the day it was made, possibly more relevant. Plus, it's really funny, really entertaining, and at the end, has a unforgettable ending. So many of these old movies have endings that stick with you for the rest of your life. But anyway, that was Sturges, going at it from a different direction, and there's really nobody like that today. Presenting this kind of material. And I don't know if, they're so concerned with modern audiences and everything else. I don't think they believe that movie audiences are sophisticated enough to get this material. And yes, it does require a level of sophistication. And it's sad to think that, people like Harry Cohn at Columbia or, Louis B. Mayer at MGM had more respect for their audience's intelligence than filmmakers do today. Or I should say Hollywood producers. Well, filmmakers too. There's some filmmakers making just idiotic stuff. I mean, they're free to do whatever they want because their movies make money and they still make slop that appeals to what they believe is an audience of subliterates and morons. But the Hollywood moguls understood in their day that the audience understood the language of film and demanded surprise and delight, and they didn't mind being challenged, and they didn't like repetitiveness and tripe. They didn't like being pandered to. the way so many movies today do. They just pander to the audience, and ultimately fail because the movie-going audience is still smart. People didn't get dumber. The movies got dumber, but people didn't get dumber. I mean, if anything, we have an even keener understanding of the language of film now because we've got sequential storytelling thrown at us day and night. If it's YouTube videos or whatever, and television just throwing story in your face. Yeah, we get it. So you got to work harder, Hollywood, to challenge us, to engage us. And we're not stupid, And that's what Capra and Sturgis and guys like Howard Hawks, they understood this stuff. Twin Spin. Ann is back with a PS. I was hoping Gooding would be the first Frank Capra, Wendell Berry countryside superhero, someone who would be more focused on building and protecting than robot explosions. Is that the way you see the character going? It's funny you bring that up because I included Gooding because we're encouraged and allowed at Rippaverse to share all the different characters because it's a shared universe. I wanted to introduce Gooding into a storyline I was doing for another book. And I did, and I didn't get him quite right. And Caro Brown, I believe it was Caro Brown, at Rippa called me on it and said, no, you don't quite understand this. You've got to rewrite these scenes because you don't quite. And it's really funny that you brought this up about Frank Capra and that kind of character, because that's what Rippa, I don't know if they literally said we want him to be like a Frank Capra character, but that's what they were describing when they told me, look, this is what you got wrong. I mean, I got it a little wrong, but it was wrong enough that, I needed to correct it. And so they put me, Caro put me on the right track with Gooding, so I understood him, and just coincidentally, it's exactly what you were describing. That's the kind of character that they wanted, that made him unique, and that is what makes Gooding unique. And going forward, as he becomes more a part of a project that I'm working on, I'm going to keep that in mind. So kind of cool, huh? Hey, we're not over with, but I just wanted to stick this in the middle. If you have questions, like the fine people here have asked today, fantastic, probing, challenging questions, BrunoBookstore@gmail.com, BrunoBookstore@gmail.com. If you're listening, it's spelt just the way it sounds. Ace Mowick. What are sequel stories you think are great stories, yet bad sequels are bad stories, yet great sequels? Heard someone use that description recently. Sounded interesting, if somewhat contradictory. Yeah, it's real contradictory. When I think bad sequels, I think Star Wars. For me, there's only 2 Star Wars movies. That was it. The rest, they should not have bothered. But that's just my opinion. I mean, my opinion is also there's only one Indiana Jones movie. There's only one Dirty Harry movie. And I just named like 3 of my most beloved franchises, but I never wanted them to be franchises, or they failed in my mind as franchises. And the thing with sequels is you want, I've said this over and over again, people are sick of hearing it. When you do a sequel, you don't go, what's next for this character? What's next for Captain Potato Salad? No, you say, let's come up with this great story, and we're going to stick Captain Potato Salad in it. And it so very rarely happens in Hollywood that they do that they just come up with a really good story. Die Hard is, like Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 3, the best in the franchise. And they're both based on, I believe, different novels. I might be wrong about that. But Die Hard 3 is very much of the model I'm talking about, where they come up with a really good story. I mean, that didn't have to be a Die Hard story. That didn't have to be a John McClane story. That's just a hell of a story. They stick John McClane in it. Maybe it began life as a, totally independent idea. And then they said, whoa, this will be a good Die Hard story. And I know they're always looking for good Die Hard stories because I did a 2-issue comic for Epic back in the 90s called War Man. And for about 15 minutes, it was considered as Die Hard 4. They were looking at it for Die Hard 4. So they were always actively looking for concepts that they could adapt and stick John McClane in. Good stories, they could stick John McClane in. So that's the best kind of sequel. And the worst kind of sequel is the one that just is a remake. They just sort of move things around a little bit, basically make the same movie over again. Or they try to make it quote-unquote character-driven. They make it more about the character than about the story. I'm looking at every Batman movie ever made. And not exploring the world like Planet of the Apes does, or others, or the Lethal Weapon series where they thought that but to make a sequel you just had to keep adding more characters until the poster was just full of people aiming guns at you. So just bad sequels. Now, Fast and Furious is a franchise interesting because they made the first one and Vin Diesel priced out for the sequel. They couldn't make the sequel with Vin Diesel. So they kept Paul Walker and I think a couple of the other characters. They could afford them. And they made an entirely different kind of movie. And it was a successful sequel because they made an actual sequel. They didn't retell the first movie. They came up with a brand new story, brand new look, brand new location, brand new role for their lead character, and went on. Now, when they get to Fast and Furious 3, they can't afford Paul Walker either. They can't afford anybody. So they just basically, hey, it's not, the Vin Diesel Paul Walker show. It's just called Fast and Furious. As long as it's Fast and Furious, it doesn't matter who we put in it. So they bring an entire new cast of characters, and it's just make a new car racing movie, hot car movie, and hugely successful as a sequel to my mind because they wrote a really good story. I love this movie. I don't care what you say about it. This is a great movie. This is a fun, escapist movie, and I really dig it. And it's well made and everything else. And it has nothing to do with the rest of the movies except for a little, Nick Fury, do you want to join the Avengers kind of scene at the end with Vin Diesel, and not to spoil anything. And then the franchise sort of, now they've made so much money, they can afford Vin Diesel and Paul Walker again, and they make 4, which is kind of, then they make 5, with an even larger cast. Because now the franchise is up and it's moving and it's going. And 5 is a good sequel. It's a good story. It's not like the other stories. It's a very good story. It's a good heist story. It's crazy. It's wild. And it's just a good story, and they stick their characters in it. And then from there, it's downhill. Just one piece of crap after another for Fast and Furious. It's just mindless nonsense till it ultimately becomes like a superhero franchise, and stupid. But at the beginning, driven by, the needs of the budget and the needs to be creative, which are often, it's a wonderful formula. They were driven to do something different, and that's what you want in a sequel. You want something different. You want the same thing, but you want it different. You want your expectations met, but not in the way you expected them to be met. So there you have it. There's my, I don't know if I even answered your question, but very confusing. Good sequels, bad sequels, bad story, good story. I think I covered some of that. Twin spin. Ace Mowick is back with, you had expressed disagreements with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey concept. That's putting it mildly. Which is fine. But do you think that maybe it isn't that all stories are the same as his formula, but that many cultures throughout the ages just happen to have a universal story with many similar themes and storytelling tropes? I think that is what some writers today seem to misunderstand as they start out. So they will try to fit a square peg into a round hole by applying the hero's journey formula to an anti-hero detective story, or, for example, yeah, I mean, the Joseph Campbell thing, the hero's journey, and blah, 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 blah. Joseph Campbell, who never wrote a line of fiction in his life, decided that, there's only so many kinds of stories, and we are hardwired to appreciate a certain number of stories, and that's it. And every story has to fit into one of his lanes. And you couldn't be more wrong. It's such it's like I said about the Hollywood moguls respecting their audience. It's such a demonization. I think I just invented a word of the human intellect, that we don't have the range in our minds to be open to new story experiences. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. If you've ever read Richard Brautigan, you understand. Your story doesn't have to fit anything. It doesn't have to fit a formula or anything else. And the thing is, if that's the way you want to write, I mean, hacks are going to hack, and maybe you need that, crutch. You're going to follow the hero's journey, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But the danger is you got Hollywood producers who glommed onto this theory about storytelling, and they think they're geniuses now because they can quote Joseph Campbell, or they can talk about, the characters you need, the Joker, the Carpenter. I forget. There's this list of characters that Campbell said have to be in every story. Of course, they don't have to be in every story. It's ridiculous. But Hollywood producers glommed onto this so they can sound like their intellects and can sit in a production meeting and speak with some authority, even though their authority is borrowed from a failed premise. That there are just so many stories. Explains a lot about what you see at the multiplex, right? Because you think, geez, I feel like I've seen this movie before, and I haven't. Yeah, you've seen it before. You just saw it with different characters in a different setting. Just for example, the reluctant hero. Every streaming show, every movie, every whatever, this is how the hero's journey starts. The hero's journey starts with the hero. We introduce him or her, and we see they're cool and we like them. Hopefully they've written it so we like them. Hold on, let me take a sip of something here. Hopefully the writers were talented enough to write it so that you like the character and you're engaged with the character. And we move on from there to tell our story. And the challenge comes up, some challenge comes up that only this hero can help with. Only this hero has the magic spell or the chutzpah or the right weapons or is courageous enough or smart enough to solve this problem. And the hero says, nah, I'm not interested, and walks away. And you see this all the time, and it's so freaking tired. It's so tired because and I know, and everybody else who's watched TV and movies in the last 10 or 15 years knows that the very next scene is where they go visit their mom, or they see a child beheaded in front of them, or some other thing happens that makes them change their mind and go, hey, I will, parachute into Umbungistan and rescue that family. I've changed my mind. I'm the guy you want. I'd love to see a movie where they go, nah, no thanks, you already got another guy. And then continue the movie with the other guy. It's like Bradley Cooper says, yeah, I'll go do that. And it's like, nah, we already replaced you with Glenn Powell. He already agreed to do it. So anyway, and you see this over and over and over again. And there's nothing wrong with the reluctant hero as long as it has something to do with the story, has something to do with the character. Han Solo, the ultimate reluctant hero. We build up this guy as self-serving and opportunistic and everything else. And in the first Star Wars movie, I'm sorry, maybe I'm an idiot, but when I saw the first Star Wars movie and when everyone else in the audience saw the first Star Wars movie on the first day and Han Solo returns, we really thought he was gone. We had no reason to believe he was going to show up to save the day. I mean, it seems idiotic, but you're so wrapped up in the assault on the Death Star, you completely forget about Han Solo. And here he comes back. I mean, that's a great reluctant hero. That's an awesome reluctant hero because it's all built in from the beginning. And it has something to do with the story and all the rest of it. There's a point to him not jumping in with the rest and being an altruistic kind of dude. Another great reluctant hero is Frodo. I mean, this thing is thrust upon him, and he just doesn't go, I don't want to do it. Okay, I will. He's like all the way through. Like, why have you put I mean, you can see the obvious analogies or allegories to Christian belief that Tolkien put into this. But basically, Frodo's like, pass this cup from me. Why am I the guy? Why me? Let's. And the thing is, why him is intrinsic to the story. I mean, it's Frodo or Tom Bombadil. They're the only ones that can do it. And if you read Tolkien, you give that thing to Tom Bombadil, God knows where the guy's going to go. He's not going to go straight to Mordor. He's going to wander off for 50 years. So Frodo's the only guy that's going to stay on mission. And so that's a great reluctant hero. And the thing is, we really fear for him. It's not like Rambo decides, I'm going to go do that. And we know Rambo's going to kill everybody until he gets to whatever he wants to get to. Frodo, it's like, you're like, this guy's going to make it? This itty-bitty little guy against all the forces of evil in his world is going to make it. That's a great reluctant hero. But the guy who passes, the guy or gal who passes on the assignment and then, sees something on TV that reminds them of their moral compass. It makes them pick up their cell phone and go, yeah, okay, I'll do that thing that you asked me to do. That dangerous, horrible thing you asked me to do. It's just so silly. Very, very silly. Eli Zimmerman. I have just finished reading Midnight's War, written by you and Vox Day on Arkhaven. Are there any plans to continue? It was too compelling and fascinating a story to leave it, especially with so many dangling plot threads. Well, actually, I Midnight's War, in case you folks aren't aware of it, it's still available on ArcTunes. You can read the whole thing free. It posits a world ruled by vampires, and it's not like they just took over yesterday. It's like they took over a long time ago. And the human race is second-class citizens. We are chattel. We are livestock. But humans still serve a purpose. The vampires have a more industrialized way of getting the blood they need, and things like that. And the heroes in it are a bunch of basically Latter-day Crusaders who are fighting on the side of God to destroy the vampire race and bring the human race back to being the apex predator on the planet. And a lot of fun to write. Vox started it and then invited me in to introduce this police officer character. And man, I dug it. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was so much fun that Vox asked me to write a spin-off miniseries called Midnight's War Night Streets with the cop character, which I did. And I wrote, I think, 5 issues. It's like a 120-page graphic novel with Adamir Leal, awesome Adamir Leal on the art. And it's all completed, but for whatever reason, Vox has it in a drawer waiting to crowdfund it sometime this year. So there is a sequel. And Vox has also, with my cooperation, written a prose novel version of Midnight's War. And I think he wrote a prequel that wasn't a comic. I think he's written a prequel to everything, and then a prose novel which includes a lot of my material, which I got to basically go over and do rewrites on. So I contributed to the Midnight's War novel. But there is, Midnight's War Night Streets, which I had a lot of fun working on. And that should be out soon. But what is out now is Guns of Mars. Guns of Mars is available on Kindle. It is my version of a Edgar Rice Burroughs Barzoom novel. And it takes place 1,000 years after John Carter Mars is dying. It's losing its water. Society is in disarray. The cities are in ruins. And a bounty hunter is hunting a runaway Thark to bring him back alive to his tribe to face punishment for a infraction. A lot of people are calling it a spaghetti western set on Mars, and I'm not going to argue with that because that's what I set out to write. It is a spaghetti western set on Mars, and people are digging it. I'm getting some really fantastic reviews, and it's selling quite well. And it's on Kindle now. It will be in paper, and we will have a special hardcover edition as well. So that's coming in the next few weeks. But head on over to Amazon and check that out. And once the paperbacks are out, you can buy them directly from Castalia House, my publisher, my wonderful publisher. And that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for liking. Thanks for the terrific questions. I hope I was up to the answers. I think I wandered around a bit on a few of them, but hey, it's my show. You can ask for your money back. By the way, I just found out I've been totally demonetized by YouTube. They just said, hey, you don't make any money, so we're just taking you off the rolls. Fine with me. I demonetized myself a long time ago. I guess they just didn't figure that out. So anyway, thanks for everything, folks, and I will see you all down the road.